Hi, this is Jody with Get Your Face Out There on Air. And in the house I have Brian, and he is with Global Institute for Interest-Based Solutions. And he's going to talk to us about that. He's a consulting firm, and he is also an author. And he came out with this book, The Demise of Labor. And it is a dynamite book, and it has a story behind it, and we will get into that. I'm so glad you're here. You flew in, and you just got off the plane, and I'm
nice to meet you.
Glad you made it. Absolutely. It's wonderful to meet you, too. So let's start. I know you have a story to tell, like everybody, and it's a really touch and go story because it has to do with you, and it has to do with your family. I guess a few of your sons?
Sure.
Brothers or sons?
Son-in-law, my wife, my daughter.
So it encompasses pretty much your entire family. It affected.
Part of it, yeah.
So tell everybody kind of what happened on that specific day that drove you out and inspired you to go in a different direction with your life.
Well, I believe that on May 6th of 2016, we were able to see the true colors of labor, of the labor organization that I worked for all my life. And what was interesting is that we were able to take a look at, maybe about 6 months later, take a look at what the true value of labor is in this country. And being in the labor movement for so many years, I was able to channel that energy toward the history behind the labor movement, going back all the way from, say, 1979, for I know, and actually back to the 50s with my dad, and then all the way forward till I left office and retired. So
you didn't really know it when you were in it. But when you left, and in hindsight, and you reflected, and you went back like to the 50s and the 80s, and to the present, did you see a transition happening, or was it always the same, and everybody was just had blinders on? Well,
my whole focus when I was in office was to go ahead and change the dynamics of labor. Change the dynamics of the labor movement, because that's exactly what it's supposed to have been. Is a movement towards something that's greater than itself. And it has turned into something that is totally different today. And
so people can't really depend on it or rely on it the way they used to.
It depends. There are labor organizations out there that still have more of a bottom-up type approach to the way that they operate.
Now, when you say bottom up, like ethics, or what do you mean by that?
They're more ethically inclined to do things for the membership, but I guess in the overall picture, when you have the big labor that I speak about in the book, you're looking at labor being more of a capitalistic type of environment where they're just looking at dues, about money, about how they're going to stay in power, how they're going to stay employed. And that's where, for myself, I never got into that. I got into the point where I was I went to the top of my organization, which was the IBW. I went to the top of it in Washington, D.C., but I had never lost the value structure of what labor meant and what it was all about, which is
for the people.
For people. So in my consulting business, the consulting business that I'm involved in talks about, and I work toward helping workers, but in the way that I help workers is through the employer. So the employer, what we do is we do a bunch of things for the employer.
You educate them.
We educate them on, a prime example is the new Supreme Court ruling on the Janus case, where they went ahead and the Supreme Court ruled that workers have the right to opt in to a labor organization. Whereas the Abood case, which I speak a lot of in my book, was passed 40 years ago. That was you had the ability as a worker to opt out of
so you had a choice, and now you don't.
Now you do. As a worker.
Back then you didn't.
Back then you had to opt out of a labor organization. Your choices were you were already in, and you had to figure out a way to get out if you didn't believe or belong to it, or you didn't want to belong to it anymore. Now, it's like any other thing. When you go to the grocery store and you want to buy, something, you have a choice to purchase this type of mayonnaise or this type of mayonnaise or this type of peanut butter or this type of peanut butter. You have a choice of what you want to do, or you have a choice not to purchase it at all. In the same way that the Supreme Court ruling gave employees the right to work and the right to choose. And I think that was vital.
Absolutely.
With the Janus case.
Absolutely. I'm not really familiar with the Janus case, but, it sounds like you're moving in the right direction. And are you seeing changes now? Yes,
we're seeing changes, but we're also spreading the message. While we're doing work as the Global Institute for Interest-Based Solutions. Okay. Myself, Brandon, and Jonathan, who you'll meet in a little bit, we go ahead and we educate employers on their rights, the rights that they have to go ahead and to be able to conduct business and conduct two-way communication that does not have third-party interference. And that's, to me, is vital.
Yeah, because their mindset is way back in the olden days. They don't know what's changed, probably, and you need to tell them and spread the word so everybody knows that there are other options out there.
So educational-wise, what we do is not only that, we do direct persuading, obviously. We do educational building, workforce development. We work with the HR departments. We build models with schedules. We do things that I negotiate contracts. Obviously, I've done that for many years on the union side. Now I negotiate contracts for the employer. Now that's the employers, they enjoy me being there, and I kind of enjoy it too because I love negotiations. But I guess
and nothing's better than face-to-face.
Yes, and negotiations is really, really easy when you have like 35 years of doing it.
Right, absolutely.
So for me, it becomes second nature to the point that we're going ahead and we're making sure that the company is provided for, and their legal process that they can follow under the National Labor Relations Act is abided by the union.
So you travel all over the world.
Correct.
To do these consultations. Do you offer, if there's somebody outside of the country or whatever and they're interested in what you do you offer any programs online or classes to teach employers what you go out and normally teach face-to-face?
We usually do a face-to-face consultation.
Okay.
We do some stuff over the phone in conference calls, but the majority of the things that we do, and we find it, I guess, more fitting, is when we do it one-on-one with the employer. When an employer calls us and they say, hey, I'm having trouble, communicating with my employees. I have a feeling that they're leaning toward maybe a third party coming in. What we do is we make sure that we do an employee satisfaction survey. We do a bunch of different things to find out what the issues and the interests are of employees.
And that's really hard because, a lot of employees are intimidated by going and expressing their feelings and wanting to make a change, and they want to. So if they can do it, in a way where, you're kind of anonymous and then the boss can then relay it to you, that's very beneficial. Do you find that that's an issue with some of the bigger corporations where the employees just are afraid? They don't want to say anything. They don't want to lose their job.
Yes, the right for an employee to have a voice in the workplace is vital. It's how that voice is channeled properly. Right. And companies sometimes they get really large.
Sure.
And they get really large really fast. So what happens is they ask us to come in. They ask us to help with their model, help with their communication between employee and employer, and it really helps the business grow in productivity. We've shown productivity increases. It
has to, because everybody's voice is being heard and everything's being approached and resolved. Because when they're coming up with their problems and there's a solution, then everybody's happy all the way around. And when a boss really is there to support the team, then the team doesn't have a problem supporting, the company.
And a lot of times, just to touch base on that, a lot of times it's just visibility by the boss. It's about making sure that sometimes that the CEO of the company goes around and says, "Hey, thank you for the job that you're doing."
I agree.
Just
Instead of complaining, just give those positive.
The positive motivation is huge, but
acknowledging their work and being present.
Correct, and when you acknowledge it, you also have to acknowledge, and what we teach is acknowledging the issues, and the interests of employees, but also employees have to acknowledge the issues and interests of the employer, because there's a huge investment that the company has made in its employees, in the direction and the vision that they have for the company.
Well, they invested a lot of time in training and working and
money and
all kinds
to build a business. So we want to make sure
they stay and not go anywhere.
Of course, because that's what makes the economy grow. Is corporate America, is businesses, all, whether it be large businesses or whether it be small businesses, it's all valuable to our economy. So we're there to go ahead and help facilitate those things.
Now, do you only go into large corporations, or do you work with mom and pop, or do you? I mean, are you game to going here, there, everywhere with any business?
That's a great question, and we make sure that we right size anything, whether it be a small mom and pop group that has 10, 15 employees, 2 or 3, 5 employees, or the large corporations that have 5,000, 500, 10,000 workers.
And how about just a young couple just starting out and building their experience, but they need somebody, a mentor, and do you help like new businesses?
Sure.
Okay,
sure.
You do that.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We do. Brandon touches base a lot with them, the small companies and the large companies, and then Jonathan Sutton also does that as well.
Yeah, because I'm sure each one is so different. As far as, the agenda that you're going to have for each company.
There's different nuances with each group, totally different. But then there's common themes also that you find as you're peeling the onion back, and going to that core and trying to find out exactly what's going on with their company. If there are things that are going right, we make sure that we showcase that.
Sure.
If things are going wrong, we make sure that we try and fix that. And help both parties. The one thing that we do build, and I got to say this, we build what they call consensus. A lot of people believe in just compromise. And compromising is something that's obviously, everybody does in their lives. But building consensus is vital to a company or a corporation to go ahead and move forward and to be successful. And even as an individual, consensus is important to be successful in whatever you do, because you have to put yourself in the other person's shoes.
Sure.
And the other side has to put themselves in the worker's shoes. But it doesn't mean that you have to believe in it. You just have to understand it.
Right, understand it.
And once you do that, and I talk a lot about it in my book.
And a lot of the corporations, I think they get disconnected after a while.
Sure.
Because they have a lot on their plate, I get it. But from time to time, they should take notice of everybody that's involved in their place of employment and kind of like talk to them, even if it's for 5 or 10 minutes a week or a month, and it will benefit them, it will benefit the employee, and they'll feel appreciated.
Sure.
And they won't feel like, oh, he doesn't have time to come down and talk to us, and then they'll be talking behind his back, and you don't want that either.
No, and that's how you lose the communication between employees and employers. So we train, and it sounds very simplistic, but
you lose sight of it, so you kind of need that. Just like everybody needs a reminder here and there from day to day.
In our daily lives.
Sure,
sometimes we lose sight of just talking with our friends, or talking with our wife, or our kids, or our husbands, or whoever it may be. We got to make sure that we maintain the relationship, and that's what we do. We help maintain that relationship. We build upon it to make sure that the company is successful. as a whole, employees and employers together.
That's key.
Now, my book, The Demise of Labor, I talk heavily about that. I talk about that. I talk about the experiences I've had in the labor movement, obviously, and the things that I had to endure to continue to still believe in labor and believe in the companies. Because the bottom line is this. When I was in labor, one of the things that was important to me is making sure that corporations and companies were successful. Mm-hmm. Now that might sound, if you're in the labor movement, that might sound, well, why would that matter?
It does matter.
It does matter, because if the company is not successful, then the employees are not going to have, if they're not successful,
what they need.
The employees are not going to be successful because they're not going to have a job. So we want to make sure that the companies are doing what they're supposed to do and making sure that they're making profits and they're making so that way they can go ahead and take care of their employees. So it's vital. And I talk a lot about it in my book to make sure that the understanding is there of what the Global Institute does.
So you saw a lot of problems in the labor and you were compromising just to keep your job. And then when you finally were out of it, then you decided to bring it upon yourself to do all the changes that you probably were very aware of?
So to answer that question, I'll make this, I'll make it as short and sweet as possible. Okay. So when I was in labor,
yes,
I practiced what I'm preaching today.
Good.
Okay, because I believed in employers' rights when I was in labor. I believed in workers' rights when I was in labor. I wanted to make sure that both parties had the ability to go ahead and communicate effectively with each other. It's very simplistic to me. However, with a large union, mm-hmm. they don't necessarily see it that way. They have an antiquated model from time to time. And in this case with the IBEW, their model was very antiquated. Mm-hmm. So what happened is when you step out of the box, it doesn't go over very well. Okay? Oh, no. So obviously the demise took place of what happened on May 6th with myself, but the demise of labor, it didn't just happen on May 6th. The demise of labor has been happening over the last 40 years, where the model has not changed. Now, somebody will get a hold of this tape and this interview, mm-hmm. and will say, well, he don't know what he's talking about. We're doing this, we're doing that, the whole thing.
Well, everybody has their opinion.
It's not true.
Experience.
The reality is, it's truly not true.
Right.
The antiquated model, I've experienced it all over the country, all over Canada, just recently, where it's still the same thing.
Right. Well, we definitely got to make changes. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a small break, and we are going to come back. So stay with us. Thank you. And we're back, and I'm here with a few more guests. We still have Brian in the house, and we have Jonathan, and we have Brandon, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what they do. Jonathan, you're an attorney, and I'm assuming you help overlook everything that goes on with the book and the company. What else do you guys? What else do you do?
Well, when there's cause for that, then I often will handle the charges filed before the National Labor Relations Board.
Okay.
And I respond to those allegations and see them through. So that I do in addition to what these gentlemen do.
Okay, so do you help facilitate with what they do as moving forward with their books and in their company as well?
Well, I really had nothing to do with the book. The book
came
along.
Okay.
That was, Brian's life story.
That is.
It really is. I mean, it's an amazing
great book. I mean, you really need to pick it up.
I'm reading it. I couldn't put it down. I got to 100 pages. I had to finish it. Mm-hmm. But no, these are fine gentlemen. I really enjoy working with them. How you do anything is how you do everything. And it's
Absolutely.
Really, it's really been a blessing to work with these two gentlemen, because oftentimes in this industry, as an attorney, you're playing cleanup for consultants' mistakes and errors and issues. And thankfully, I've never once had any issue with these gentlemen or anything that they've ever done. So truly in that instance, in that regard, it's a tremendous blessing. Besides, they're gentlemen of integrity, and I, for one, as an attorney, greatly and tremendously appreciate that.
And they're few and far between, you know, that really
Exactly.
exemplify that. And Brandon, the son of Brian, what's your role?
So I'm a labor relations consultant.
Okay.
Companies usually engage me for direct persuading or, you know, RC elections, for campaign response, that kind of stuff, or even training, business model improvement, depending on what the companies need.
So you're a man of many hats. And what do you see
Master
moving
of
forward for yourself and in the company?
Well, just to kind of do this similar work, I find it very fulfilling as we go in. We help companies, and most of the time when we go in, there's usually some issues between the employer and the employee. Then Brian, myself, Jonathan, we go in and we usually fix most of the issues, if not all, and improve the processes that employees need to work under or work with, and improving the workforce in its entirety.
So if you could give any tips to anybody out there, you know, maybe one or two, could you offer any?
Sure. One of the things that I would stress with employees, or I'm sorry, with employers, is that listen to your employees. There's usually telltale signs when it comes to a union, you know, basically knocking at your door. When it comes to communication or specific work practices that could be confused with, say, favoritism.
So people see a lot of that. Now, do they shut down? Do they call out for work? Are they coming late? Or like, what are some of the telltale signs that, you know, would be a red flag for an owner of the company?
When communication stops. When communication stops and employees start to become disengaged, you start seeing productivity levels kind of fall, morale gets really bad, that kind of stuff.
Oh, so it really goes from here to here.
Yes, ma'am.
It drops completely.
Very quickly, too. Well, let me rephrase. I shouldn't say very quickly. Over time, you'll start to see like a deteriorating kind of morale going. And then eventually, as you mentioned, yeah, it'll go from here to here very quickly, and that's when unions come in.
Do you find that the employees kind of talk behind the owner's back, and then, like, you know, like the telephone, and just nonsense starts to build and snowball, and it becomes a whole big mess, and some of it's false, and there's not much truth?
Majority of the time, yes. It's usually a bad game of telephone, or, you know, like anybody else, imaginations kind of run wild, and things get kind of taken out of place.
They assume
yes.
the worst. Your mind is just a place of, you know, can do more damage than...
Yes. Then what the reality is, so companies engage people like us, and we come in and give appropriate information and kind of bring everybody back together using our interest-based solutions.
Companies
methods.
need you guys.
I believe so.
Okay, well, so what's the best way that they can get a hold of you?
They can contact me or Brandon. I'll give you my email address, which is Brian, BRIAN, at GIIBS.com. Or you can call me at 202-704-9929.
Do you have a website?
And our website is the Global Institute for Interest-Based Solutions.
www.
And you can go and look that up, and then you'll go ahead and see you know, the different things that we are able to accomplish for you. Also, Brandon, maybe you want to give yours.
Yeah, so if you guys would like to find us on the web, it's www.giibs.com. And you can reach us anytime at 202-705-1700.
Wonderful. Give these guys a call. If you have any questions, go to the website. They have a lot of information out there, and check out this terrific book. It was a pleasure you joined me today, and until next time, everyone, take care of yourself. There's only one you. Bye.